will not step down as the chairman of Maruti Suzuki. That's a strong assertion coming from RC Bhargava, who is also the former independent director at IL&FS. Speaking to CNBC TV 18's Parikshit Luthra, Bhargava said that he believes a director must step down only when something is established against him or her. He added that IL&FS is important for the economy and that the infrastructure sector, it is very important. Here is an excerpt of that interview.
We'd like to get your first reaction on this entire controversy because the centre sought the removal of the board of directors as they failed to discharge their duties. This is what they said in the NCLT, and they also painted a rosy picture of the balance sheets.
Well, let me put it this way. The company IL&FS is an extremely important company for the economy and for the infrastructure sector. The government acting to do what was required to ensure that the company remained a going concern is something which is obviously the right thing to do and was required. Now, amongst the things which have been said, let me point out that what went wrong with IL&FS was that there was not enough capital and liquidity in the company to service the thing. Now, we will not go into details why that situation developed. This situation was in the knowledge of the management and the board at least for the last 3 to 4 years. And it was reviewed in most of the board meetings which happened during this period. Action plans for solving these problems of liquidity and stabilizing the operations of the company were made in every board meeting, reviewed, and then move on. Unfortunately, and that's where I think the question of failure comes in, what was done in terms of raising of capital or increasing the equity capital of the company did not happen. Okay. The divestment of assets did happen to an extent, but not adequately to stave off the defaults which took place.
There has been this debate on whether the nominee directors and the shareholders should have also been held accountable. The people who were named by the government were the independent directors. But do you feel that the shareholders who had veto rights, the nominee directors who had key rights of vote in major decisions, they should have been held accountable?
No, I'm not sure how these legal applications are made and whether a nominee of an institution should or can be named, because they keep changing frequently also. And actually it's the institution which is on the board in a sense, represented by that person. He's not there in his personal capacity. So whether these people should be named or not is a question mark. I'm not sure if they could be named because of this situation of being a nominee.
But were you surprised that only independent directors were
No, because I don't think nominee directors, I mean, my understanding is that nominee directors are not in such matters named.
IL&FS has suffered from a string of defaults. Were red flags never raised? Was no one aware that the company could collapse in the last 3 years, sir?
As I said, it was known for the last 4 years, I think, 3-4 years, that there was need to increase capital of the company. That there was a mismatch between the assets and the liabilities. It's not unknown. And I said many steps were taken to increase the capital, but they just didn't happen.
Do you think that's where the role of the shareholders needs to be also looked at, sir?
I'm not going into what the reasons were, but the fact is that we could not increase the capital.
What about the role of LIC, sir? Given that LIC was the largest stakeholder and had the maximum representation on the board, do you think it should be held accountable for letting matters come to a head, sir?
No, I'm not somebody to evaluate or comment on what LIC did or not. That's for the LIC board and perhaps the government to look into. It's not my job to do that.
So if you have these key shareholders, sir, then should they be held accountable at the end of the day? If they had a great say in running the company, they had the veto right.
I think accountability will always ultimately be of the whole board. You can't hold individual directors responsible. That wouldn't be consistent with corporate governance.
But the key stakeholders, not the main...
No, also that.
Yeah.
The shareholders in any company, whether it is IL&FS or any other company, should always be concerned with the protection and the growth or profits on their investment. It doesn't matter if it's whether you're on the board or otherwise. Shareholders are always to be concerned with that. And if the shareholder feels that some directors are not doing their jobs particularly well, they remove those shareholders, because you get a chance to vote on a director of a company every 3 years. So if you find the performance of a director is not satisfactory, the shareholder removes him. So the shareholder is certainly concerned with what happens about his company.
Given that the LIC was the largest stakeholder and had the maximum representation on the board, do you think eventually they should be held accountable, sir?
No, as I said earlier, you can't hold any one institution or any one director or any one person responsible.
It's a collective failure.
It's a collective responsibility, and as the government has said, the board failed to deliver ultimately. That's what it says, which is a fact, that the board failed to deliver because the company went into default.
There have been reports about whether the directors who have been removed can continue as directors of other boards. What's your take on this? Will you be stepping down from your position as Chairman, Maruti Suzuki India Limited, sir, or are you waiting for more legal clarity?
No, I'm not stepping down. And the law, as far as I've been understood and told to me as the law is, that you only need to step down if something is established against you which makes you unfit to be a director.
Well, that is the first reaction.